everybody. Today we're going to do the lesson Relations between men and women. So this is a continuity of the previous episode in which we had the introduction to the lesson. You may remember the lesson is by Rajaram Mohan Roy, okay? One of the founding fathers of, is one of the architects of India, modern India, okay? So, he's a very deep thinker and he has brought about many reforms for the good of society, for the good of our society. One of the reforms you remember is the introduction of English education into the society of into Indian society. Now the result of that is what we are doing right now, because Rajaram Mohan Roy introduced English education into India. We are reading a lesson in English. What was done 300, 400 years ago maybe, has its after effects now across the country, right? Anyway, we'll continue with this. We're on page 57 of the PDF counter. Thirdly, with regard to their trustworthiness, let us look minutely into the conduct of both sexes, and we may be enabled to ascertain which of them is the most frequently guilty of betraying friends. Right? So here the third quality of women, which is being discussed, men and women both. The third quality, the third characteristic of both sexes, both men and women, the third quality is trustworthiness. Who can you trust more in general? Can we trust a woman more or can we trust a man more? So the author says, let us look minutely. Minutely means in detail, in great detail, let us look into the conduct of both sexes so that we can ascertain. Ascertain means we can understand, okay? We can gauge, we can measure which of them is the most guilty of betraying friends, right? So trustworthiness, who betrays his friends? Is it the man or is it the woman? Now, he continues. If we enumerate such women in each village or town as have been deceived by men, and such men as have been betrayed by women, I presume that the number of deceived women would be found 10 times greater than that of betrayed men. So here, betrayal, what do we mean by betrayal? Loss of you cheat them, right? Now the particular form of cheating, there are many forms of cheating, money and so on. But the particular form of cheating which is being discussed here is marital infidelity. Marital infidelity. That is having the harem. Harem is like, the third, tisra form. Right? So, anyway, he says, if we enumerate means list. If we list the number of such women in each village or town as have been deceived by men. Okay, how many of these liaisons, these connections in each village? Okay? And as have been deceived by men, and such men as have been betrayed by women. Right? Such men as have been betrayed by women. I presume that the number of deceived men would be found to be 10 times greater than that of the betrayed men. higher? The number of deceived women is higher than the number of deceived. The number of deceived women is higher than the deceived, right? So what it means is men are more likely to cheat on their wives. 10 times more men are likely to cheat on their wives than women, right? So women's mind, psyche is grounded. Grounded means it's built on the solid foundation of, the household, the looking after the children, the cooking, the cleaning. They have some work to do. In short, they ಕಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಏನೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಸೊ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಇರಲ್ಲ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಓಕೆ ಸೊ ಸಿ okay, so the number of women who have been betrayed by men is 10 times higher than the number of men who have been betrayed by men. I presume, okay, men are in general able to read and write. In general, if you take a broad perspective or broad point of view, men are in general able to read and write and manage public affairs. Public affairs means they go to the office, they go to the work, the company, right? They're able to manage public affairs, by which means they easily promulgate such faults as women occasionally commit. Now, it's not as though women are totally not guilty of committing such faults. Occasionally they do commit. Right? Occasionally they do, go astray, take the wrong path. But men, because they are in control of the public affairs, all the things which go on in society, they are in the control of men. So what do? They promulgate, easily promulgate such faults as women occasionally. So they highlight. See, this woman done that and this and that and that. So the woman gets the lion's share of the blame. Men are doing everything, right? But because they're in charge of the publicity, how people see it, isn't it? See, like, for example, if you see an advertisement for a cake of soap. You see a cake advertisement for a cake of soap 10 times, 15 times. Then what will you do? You will actually go out and buy the soap. You will believe that soap is good. So if people are continuously told in the news, everywhere, women are there, this woman did that and that, 2 or 3. Then what do people believe? Believe women are such and such, so and so. They get the negative point, they get the negative attitude. Okay, people, because men are in charge of what? They are in charge of public affairs. So they control so many things. So they put the lion's share of the blame on women. Okay. One fault they have, it must be acknowledged, which is by considering others equally void of duplicity as themselves, to give their confidence too readily, from which they suffer much misery, even so far that some of them are misled to suffer themselves to be burned to death. Now, one fault they have, they refers to the women, right? One fault they do have. What is that fault? It must be acknowledged. We must acknowledge that fault. What is that fault? It is by considering others equally void of duplicity. Duplicity is the intention to deceive, the ability to cheat. Okay. They are void of duplicity. Women are like, they are more innocent than, right? the void of depravity, the void of the intention to cheat, right? And to give their confidence too readily. So what do? They trust others too easily. Give confidence means what? They place their confidence in others. Somebody talks about, oh yes, no, immediately the thing goes on, right? So they give their confidence too readily, from which they suffer much misery. So it's not as though the world is a very, it's not filled full of flowers. There's so many thorns, so many problems, so many stones on the path. The world is not it's not a bit of roses, is it? So people are there who will intentionally do things. Right? So women, they give their confidence to others. As a result, they suffer much misery. Right? So they're led to believe one thing, something else happens, third thing follows, and the thing goes on. Right? So far that some of them are misled to suffer themselves to be burdened at that time. Okay, the idea was floated, if the woman survives the husband after the husband passes away, right? If the woman survives, then what will happen to the name of the family if she goes astray? As a result, she should climb the funeral pyre, commit sati. Women believe this. Large numbers actually climbed the funeral pyre. When the flames were burning, folded hands in prayer. These flashes. They couldn't fight back. See, you have one or two warriors, Rami, Lakshmi, Baya, Tanasi, one or two warriors, Pitur Rani. Others, heads, modesty, humility, all these qualities which are good in peaceful time. When it comes to a difficult situation, they become negative. Right? So they actually suffer themselves to be burned to death. Right? They believe, my soul will go, live in heaven with my husband after we pass away. See? Okay, so this was, and what did Raja Raman do? He abolished the system of sati. Right? He abolished. So that it doesn't exist now, right? No. Next, in the fourth place, with respect to their subjection to their passions. Subjection to their passions. Who are most of the scientists? See, there's a joke, right? The husband and the wife are arguing, right? And the husband says, most of the scientists are men. Most of the presidents of countries have been men. Most of the people in power are men. Right? Woman replies, most of the criminals are also men. So, you see, men, how are they able to become presidents and people in power? Because they are passionate. See, passion is a quality which people must possess. But to direct the passions, actually to direct the passions into a certain channel. You see, if you say instinct is happiness. Instinct is happiness. Instinct to eat. If you don't satisfy that instinct to eat for itself, you'll be in trouble. Hunger, sleep, thirst, all these you have to satisfy, all the instincts. Okay? Now, instinct is happiness, right? But for a man to give in to his instincts is bad. Right? Totally become animal. Right? No thoughts, only like eventually what happens if a person gives in to his instinct, you'll find what is happening in society. Men are moving hungers and fevers and thirst. You see them, they're walking, moving hungers, fevers and thirst. So it is not, I'm not saying it, it's a quotation from books. Right? Now, we are talking about what? We are talking about the subjection to the passions. Right? Subjection. Passions. You give in to your passions. Right? So, the subjection to the passion, this may be judged by the custom of marriage as to the respective sexes. Right? So, how does a person actually stop this instinct? All the instinct. He gets married. The wife cooks, the instinct of hunger is satisfied. The wife does everything and everything is satisfied. Right? Now, what is the custom of marriage spoken of here? What are the advantages of marriage spoken of here? Okay. So here we're talking about custom of marriage. Right? One man may marry 2 or 3, sometimes even 10 wives and upwards. This was common in those days. This was common. Yes, it's called polygamy.
In China, one person, he had got married some near 100 wives, I think. Right, sir? He died recently, 2 or 3 years.
Wives. I'm talking about 100 wives at the same time for the same man.
Yeah.
Called a harem. That custom is also prevalent. It's called polygamy.
Okay.
Gamos is women. Poly is many. One man having many wives.
Polygamy.
Right?
Polyandry.
So see, the other is also, that was also prevalent but not as widespread. Polyandry. Andros is men. One woman having many husbands.
Andrews.
Polyandry.
Andrews.
Andros is men. See? Okay. So both the customs were prevalent. Okay. Polyandry and polygamy. But polygamy was visible. Right? If you take an emperor like Akbar, he had a harem, polygamy. So sometimes even 10 wives or upwards. While a woman who marries but one husband desires, it is said, to follow him, forsaking all worldly enjoyments. Okay? So a woman who marries once, okay, that's it, the moral instinct comes in, right? Desires at the death of the husband to follow him, forsaking all worldly enjoyments. No more life, no more worldly enjoyments. When he dies, I should also die. That's what they thought at that time. Or to remain living the austere life of an ascetic. They used to enter the temples, pray to God, fast, sleep on the, what do you call it? The
floor,
stone,
bare floor,
stone,
bare
floor,
stone.
yes. Stone
And
floor.
eat bare food.
Eat bare food, yes, all these aspects. Right? So they had to remain living an austere life in an ascetic case.
Straight, simple living life without any.
Like without any worldly enjoyment. Next, fifthly, the accusation of the vast and the want of various virtuous knowledge is an injustice. So men do all the, infidelity. They accuse the women, right? So there's the accusation of want of virtuous knowledge, right? Observe what pain, what slighting. Slighting is the insults she receives, the complaints she bears. What slighting, what contempt. You are such and such, so and so. Being treated as inferior, that is being treated with contempt. And what afflictions their virtue enables them to support. How much they have to undergo, how much they have to bear. Because they're women. Right? Okay. How many Kulin Brahmins are there who marry 10 or 15 wives for the sake of money? Maybe it's. So I heard this sort of story in the news recently.
Is it so?
I think
So
it was
everybody
serial,
does nowadays.
serial.
Only
No,
few
not-
men are
Not
doing
serial,
that.
not news, serial. Goes to the wife, one wife for the money, then runs away after getting the dowry. Second wife somewhere else, one in Karnataka, third in Andhra, fourth in Tamil Nadu, like that. It's a serial, right?
Easy Brahmin
Why
search.
it's a serial and it's sort of
Everybody
criminal
does.
thread or story, criminal story thread, right? This actually happened. It was custom in older India. How many Kulin Brahmins are there who marry 10 or 15 wives for the sake of money? That never see the greater number of them after the day of marriage. After the day of marriage, take the dowry and go elsewhere. And visit others only 3 or 4 times in the course of their life. Right? So, they marry 10 or 15 wives. After the day of marriage, they go somewhere else to some other wife. Visit others only 3 or 4 times during the course of their life. Still, amongst those women, most, even without seeing or receiving any support from their husband, living dependent on their fathers or brothers and suffering much distress, continue to preserve their virtue, and when Brahmins or those of other tribes bring their wives to live with them, what misery do the women not suffer? See, this was what was happening at that time, right? They lived without seeing or receiving any support from their
Other
husband,
tribes bring them.
whether
Live
financial
with them.
or otherwise, right? Living dependent on their fathers or brothers. A woman needs 3 men in their lives.
Son,
First is
Father.
the father,
son,
second is the
husband, and
third
then
is the
son.
son. Right? Fourth is a brother, right?
It is not optional. Brother can change at any time.
So they live dependent on their fathers or brothers and suffering much distress. Right? They continue to preserve their virtue. Right? And when Brahmins or those of other tribes bring their wives to live with them, what misery do the wives not suffer? So some guests come, make this, do this, everything. At marriage, the wife is recognized as half of her husband. The better half, which incidentally soon becomes the bitter half. Right? Better. Bitter butter.
Oh,
Right? At one marriage, the wife is recognized as half of her husband. The whole concept of what is that? Ardhanarishwara. But in after conduct, they're treated worse than inferior animals. In actual life, they're treated worse than inferior animals. For the woman is employed to do the work of a slave in the house, such as in her turn to clean the place very early in the morning, very early. She has to clean the whole house, whether cold or wet, whether it's raining outside, whether it's chilly outside, she has to clean the house, to scour the dishes, to wash the floor, to cook night and day. Night and day, see, this factory for the stomach never ending. Morning over, afternoon over, evening over, and so on. And snacks in between. Right?
Yeah. In between snacks. Pre-breakfast, okay, something to go.
Right? Night they prepare and serve food for husband, father, mother-in-law, sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, and friends and connections. See,
Then again, we have to wait for them to sleep. After that, we have to sleep.
Exactly. Not only that, they have to wait for them to come home and serve them dinner.
After all, everything. We still have to wait until they sleep.
Yes.
So
this is how the factory
being
system
educated, some people do that nowadays.
But this is how the factory system came in. It's like a factory. So men are now working in the factory and become the machines. If you deal with a machine, what do you become? You become a machine. If you deal with a like-minded person, you become like that person. But if you deal with a machine, you become a machine. Right? So, anyway, for amongst Hindus, more than the other tribe relations, long reside together, more common brothers respecting the worldly affairs. Right? In Hindu society, what was prevalent at the time? Okay? They had the joint family system. Joint family system means division of property. Okay, at one time or the other. Okay. Now, the women have to be on the person. Okay. When the brothers are quarreling among themselves about the worldly affairs, the women have to bear it. Right? And also they have to do all this work. So this is the life of the women. If in preparation or serving up of the victuals they commit the smallest fault, they put a slightly lower amount of salt, smaller amount of salt, or too much spices. If they commit the smallest fault in the preparation or serving up of the victuals is the food, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. If they commit the slightest fault in preparing food, what insult do they not receive from their husband? Right? Their mother-in-law and the younger brothers of their husband. Everyone starts berating them. Right? After all the male part of the family have satisfied themselves, the women content themselves with what may be there, whether sufficient in quantity or not. Where Brahmins or Kayasthas are not wealthy, their women are obliged to attend to their cows and to prepare the cow dung for firing. They used to paste this cow dung on the walls of the cakes or In the afternoon, they fetch water from the river or tank, and at night perform the office of menial servants in making the beds. In case of any fault or omission in the performance of those labors, they receive injurious treatment. So sound this thing, like all sorts of okay, from the husbands, right? Should the husband acquire wealth, suppose the husband becomes rich, he indulges in criminal amours. First effect of wealth is criminal amours. Amours are love. To have perfect knowledge in her own presence, he will indulge in this. And almost under her eyes, and does not see her perhaps once a month. As long as the husband is poor, she suffers every kind of trouble. And when he becomes rich, she is altogether heartbroken. All this pain and affliction, their virtue alone enables them to support. It's only their virtue that enables them to support. When a husband takes 2 or 3 wives to live with him, they are subjected to mental miseries and constant bickering. Okay? And then quarreling and this thing, okay? Even this distress situation, they virtuously endure. Sometimes it happens that the husband, from a preference for one of his wives, behaves cruelly to another. Okay? Amongst the lower classes and those even of the better class who are not associated with good company, the wife on the slightest fault or even the bare suspicion of her misconduct is chastised as a thief. So what is this? Amongst the lower classes and even those of the better upper classes who are not associated with good company. So if they don't have good manners, whether it's the upper class or whether it's the lower class, if they don't have good manners, what will happen to the wife? When she commits the slightest fault, or even on the bare suspicion, they only suspect, she may not have done anything. The bare suspicion of a slightest fault, she's chastised as a thief. Chastised means soundly scolded.
What's it?
Soundly scolded, roundly and soundly scolded, berated. Suspicion of a fault, right? The respect to virtue and the reputation generally makes them forgive this treatment. The virtue and the reputation generally makes them forgive even this treatment. If unable to bear such cruel usage, the wife leaves her husband house to live separately from him. Then the influence of the husband with the magisterial authority is generally sufficient to place her again in his hands. So suppose the wife is unable to bear the treatment given by the husband, all this, she runs away. Then the husband's influence with the magisterial authorities, the court, legal authority, they legally bring her back. Right? Okay? So, the magisterial authority is generally sufficient to place her again in his hands. When in revenge for her quitting him, he seizes every pretext to torment her. So, for leaving him in revenge, he seeks every pretext. Small thing, small reason or big reason, he seeks every reason, pretext to torment her in various ways.
This is not possible nowadays. Women
And,
are very.
and sometimes even
careful.
puts her privately to death. Private takes her behind with lip curtain doors. These are the facts occurring every day and not to be denied. What I lament is that seeing women are thus dependent and exposed to every misery, we feel for them no compassion that might exempt them from being tried and burned to death. Right? So this is the lesson, the relations between men and women. Okay?